what? In this whole problem, YouTube has not been live.
That's what I said.
Oh, it was showing on my hello YouTube. Welcome to the show. I apologize for taking so long to get you on. We missed the whole discussion about ABA community and all the rare birds around here. I apologize for that. It's on Facebook if you want to go check it out. So yeah, I just had to refresh the browser. This has been we've had a lot of internet gremlins, as you can expect. So welcome YouTube. I'm sorry that the go live button at the top of my screen, which usually is there, was not lit up until I refreshed the browser. I was dealing with Facebook whatnots. Oh my goodness. Hello everybody. Welcome. We're just gonna jump right into it. Greg, we got this streaky brown thing. You you asked me what I think about it. Well, I think it's
I didn't
streaky
get to
all
that
over.
yet, but we're almost there.
Oh, all right. My mind is completely shot with all the
Hey,
technical
you and me
difficulties
both.
you've been having today.
Everything Facebook could do to mess this up, they've done.
They've done, and it's caused cascading uh, annoyances.
Yeah.
All right, so you asked me what I think about this bird.
We got a little brown
You
streaky
asked me
thing on
now?
the ground in California, and boy, if you go through the little brown streaky things in your field guide, there's a whole bunch of them, and we can tell from the grass and the rocks and things that this is sparrow sized. So let's go from there. What do we got?
When we think about brown streaky things on the ground, we think of sparrows for sure. That's sort of the first place that a lot of people would justifiably go towards. But
And
there's
this,
some things about this bird that do not strike me as very sparrowy, and just sort of the way that it holds itself is sort of the main thing. It's sort of very fret heavy, which
yeah,
sparrows usually are very balanced when they sit on the ground. It's got a very short tail. Most sparrows have pretty long tails when they're sitting on the
yeah.
ground. It's kind of equally streaky on the top and on the bottom, and I don't know too many sparrows that are sort of that way. Um, and the bill is very long for a sparrow. I don't think this
It
is
is.
not a sparrow, is what I'm saying, Greg.
It's. I mean, it's. I would not. I would not. Uh, Anybody who thinks that who originally immediately thought this is a sparrow, that's not a bad guess. You're kind of in the right neighborhood. It's got that conical bill that a sparrow has, but
Mm-hmm.
so let's go into comparing the little brown streaky things, and whoa. So here's our mystery bird in the middle.
Oh, it's a lot of streaky things.
I know. Look at that. Look at that. Um, and if you go through your field guide, you'll quickly narrow it down because there's just so much streaking going on, top and bottom, and there's
Top
really
and
no
bottom all over.
rufous. And so you'll land on finches, and in particular female finches, um, and that's what we've got here. And so look at the three birds that are kind of stacked up in the center, and notice how we kind of progress from the least amount of pattern to kind of a middling amount of pattern to
Mm-hmm.
something with a fairly substantial amount of pattern on it. Um, People are saying in the comments, water pipit, the bill on all of these birds is much too heavy for a pipit. Pipits have narrow
Mm-hmm.
bills, thin bills like a
And
warbler.
long legs,
Yes.
very slender body. It's a different looking bird when you see it walking around on the ground. This one looks kind of chunky, heavy, just kind of all over, whereas a pipit would be more lithe.
Yeah, so the common conundrum in this group of birds is purple finch, house finch, and out
Yes.
west Cassin's finch. Um,
Formerly the Carpodocus finches. There's something else now, that Hemorrhaeus or something like
yep.
that now. Referencing
And
the
and
blood.
so in the middle is the bird we're discussing, and just cut to the chase here. This is a female Cassin's finch,
Mm,
and what you can see is the bill is thinner than the
very
two
thin.
above. The bird above and below it. The bird above is a female house finch,
Hmm.
and you'll notice how it's grayer. It's kind of more washed out. The
Yeah,
streaks
very
aren't as.
little pattern.
Yeah,
Yeah,
exactly. And the bill.
big broad streaks on the front and almost nothing on the head or the back. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Also notice the primary sticking out. The house finch has short wings. They're not really migratory all that much. Whereas Cassin's finch and purple finch, they do migrate. They have longer wings, and you can see that. Um, but then now, look at the purple finch below it on the right, and notice how that face pattern. It's like the face pattern of the purple finch is dialed up. Cassin's finch has a hint of that, but it doesn't really have that. And then also notice, and it's kind of hard to see, but you can see it, how the streaking on the Cassin's finch goes all the way to the undertail coverts, and the purple finch, they kind of fade away by the time they get to the legs.
Do you know where that photo of the purple finch was taken, Greg? I ask because there are two subspecies of purple finch.
There are,
and there's an eastern purple finch and a western purple finch. And my sense is that I don't have a ton of experience with the western purple finches. I live in the southeast, so I don't have an absolute ton of experience with the eastern purple finches. They don't frequently make it down this far. It's certainly one of our more unusual winter birds. But my sense is that the western purple finches tend to be a little muddier. Which makes sense for a bird in the West, and a little bit more like a Cassin's finch than like the eastern purple finches. So it's a relatively, it's an easier mistake to make. But as you know,
it is.
The streaking is very fine on a Cassin's finch and sort of all over the place, very dense, where it's a little broader in the purple finch and the bill. The bill is sort of the main thing you want to focus on with all of these red finches that we have in North America, because they are fairly distinctive.
And then the fourth bird there on the lower left is a pine siskin, which is smaller than the other three. And of them, it's interesting, pine siskin has the bill shape is actually closer to Cassin's finch than it is the other two.
Yeah,
the other
for
two
sure.
have big, thick, triangular, heavy bills. With house finch has kind of a curved culmen, and but the Cassin's finch has a more conical bill. And pine siskin takes that to an extreme, and the streaks are much finer, and you can see, it's hard to see in this pine siskin, but they usually show some yellow in the wing. Also note how short the tail is on the siskin.
The tail's very short.
It's a small, compact bird.
Yeah, and I don't know that I've ever had an encounter with pine siskin where I did not hear them calling that kind of very distinctive finger running up a comb sort of call note that they, or that flight call that they have. They're just so loud, and they're frequently in pretty large groups, which makes them pretty distinctive from the other three. I mean, you'll see the other finches in groups, but you typically won't see them in groups as large as pine siskins are. They're very social little finches.
Right. So let's move on to our next bird.
Indeed.
And this is a pretty little bird. It comes to us from Florida.
It certainly is. And immediately, comparing it to the Cassin's finch from before, it's notably less streaky, certainly on the breast. It's got far more color in it. It's got lots of grays and beiges and... Yeah.
It's not so monotone as any of the four birds we saw in the last picture.
For sure. The tail is much longer compared to the rest of the body. And the bill, while kind of conical and clearly a seed-eating bird, is much thinner than even the thinnest of the finches that we saw before, the pine siskin and the Cassin's finch. It's shorter. It's thinner. This is a much daintier bird. You would be pretty safe in assuming if you saw it.
Yeah, and I think that if you didn't mention it, I was just looking over here at the comments. It is a sparrow. It looks like a sparrow.
One of our New World sparrows, I should say.
One of our New World sparrows, exactly. It's the house sparrow is actually the only true sparrow we have. Oh, along with Eurasian tree sparrow. So let's compare the two birds, the two species that this one is most commonly confused with. And
one of the useful things to do with sparrows is to sort of break them out by genera, by genus. And the different genuses are the ones where you're going to find the confusion species for the most part. And this is kind of a dainty long-tailed sparrow. This is one of our more common and widespread genuses, the Spizella genus, which includes a number of different familiar birds to a lot of birders around, including chipping sparrow, and also brewer's sparrow, field sparrow, clay-colored sparrow. Those are all Spizella sparrows.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
So, what we've got here is in the middle. Look at how that bird is the most patterned. Um, and
Yeah.
we're looking at adult birds here. In young birds and especially juveniles. In juveniles, all bets are off because they all look almost identical.
Very
Um,
streaky. Yeah.
but the saving thing there is that they lose that juvenile plumage really quickly and usually retain it only on the breeding grounds or nearby. So by
Mhm.
the time they get away from there, where they were born, they tend to look more like this.
Yeah. Now
Um,
that we're in the later last half of October, the second half of October, they tend to be out of that juvenile plumage for sure.
yeah. So the bird on the top has the very easily seen and sort of slam dunk ID mark of a chipping sparrow, and that is that black line that goes
Hmm.
through the eye. So from the base of the bill through the eye and then back to the back of the head, it's got that black line with a very noticeable supercilium. That's the eye line over the eye there, um, and a fairly and a well defined cap. You'll see all three of these birds have gray
Hmm.
collars, which is a good way to narrow it down to genus. There's only a couple of other sparrows that have that kind of a gray collar. Um, and the bird in the middle is a clay colored sparrow.
Hmm.
And the mark there that you can see to differentiate it from chipping sparrow, there's two things on the face. And really, what we're looking at mostly is the face and neck. And look at the lores and note how the clay colored sparrow doesn't have that dark line between the eye and the bill. And it gives the face a much more open, kind
Hmm.
of friendly look, if you will. It
Cute,
also,
however you want to use it.
uh huh. And it also has a pale stripe through the crown, which we can just barely see, but we can see it. Now, the bird on the right is one that people out east are always looking for and people out west are familiar with, and that's a brewer's sparrow. And a brewer's sparrow, very similar to clay colored, um, kind of its western counterpart.
Hmm.
Uh, it's grayer overall. It does not have the pale stripe and the median through the center of the crown. But look at the eye ring. The face pattern is very muted, and the thing you notice first is that eye ring.
Hmm. Yeah, and someone in the comments in Facebook also said Vesper Sparrow, and when I think of Vesper Sparrow, I also think of an eye ring as well.
Mm-hmm.
It goes to show you the sort of usefulness of thinking about these birds in terms of their genus,
Yes.
because Vesper Sparrow is its own genus. It's all by itself, all by its lonesome, in among North American sparrows, and it is similar to the brewer sparrow for sure, in that it has an obvious eye ring, and but it tends to be a little more streaky across the front. And I think structurally it's a very different looking sparrow. It's relatively short tailed and longer winged, and so it kind of sits differently and looks differently that way. The Spizella genus are all these kind of small, lanky, plain-breasted sparrows. And once you've kind of narrowed it down to there, then you can start thinking about those, which of the Spizella it is. I tell you, when here in the southeast, we look for clay-colored sparrow in our flocks of winter chipping sparrows, because that's a annual but still a really nice bird to find. And the first thing that stands out to me whenever I'm looking for clay-colored sparrow is that bright buff color. Frequently when I'm glassing through across a flock of small sparrows in a median, or along the side of a road, like they kind of like to hang out, that buff color is what stands out first to me, and then you can kind of zero in on that and then notice all the little things that you can see. Sometimes chipping sparrow can be kind of very buffy as well,
Mm-hmm.
but usually they tend to be much grayer. And so, clay colored sparrow, when you're looking through a flock of chipping sparrows, is going to look much brighter than the birds that it's surrounded itself with,
Yeah, and
generally speaking.
just to address a couple of comments here, I'm going to kind of go backwards. Lauren, Um, sorry to do that to you, but I slapped these guys together in Photoshop. They didn't occur naturally together. Um,
That would be cool.
and Sarah, yes, sparrows are hard. Colin, Colin Conroy notes that the brewer sparrow on the right does show a little bit of a dark line between the eye and
A
the
little
bill,
bit.
and
A
yeah,
little bit.
so really, when I mentioned the chipping sparrow with the dark lores and the dark line that goes through the eye, it's really chipping and clay colored that you're dealing with there. When you
Hmm.
get to brewer sparrow, it's a little bit tougher, but just notice how the bird is overall much more muted and gray and just kind
Hmm.
of flat than the other two. Everything is just kind of dialed down, and the color, the saturation is dialed
Yeah.
down.
Bit
And the
more of an
thing
eye
that
ring
jumps
too.
and the thing that jumps out is the eye ring. It has
Oh,
much
right.
more of an
There
eye
you go.
ring than the other two. And just one more thing about Vesper Sparrow. Vesper Sparrow has a unique face pattern that actually looks
Hmm.
more like a winter longspur than
Hmm.
anything else. And it's a bigger, chunkier bird, as Nate said.
It
It's
is
in its
bigger,
own.
and I tend to see it sitting on like power lines and
Yes.
barbed wire fences and stuff. Whereas I'll see a chipping sparrow, clay colored sparrow. I have less experience with brewer sparrow. Typically scratching around in the brush, very close to the ground. I don't see them very high. Whereas Vesper's bigger and sits higher up, and that's sort of what I'm looking for when I'm looking for a Vesper sparrow. I'm checking the limbs of kind of scraggly trees, maybe 10, 15 feet up, or power lines.
We see our friend Matt Igleski is chiming in with his usual Indiana dad joke. Good going there, Matt. All right, we're going to move on to the next
Yeah, it is
bird.
a good question, Matt. Down here in the southeast, all our clay is red, and that's like
Yeah.
clearly not clay colored at all. Yeah.
I believe that has to do with the overall buffiness of the bird in spring plumage, but who knows? Um, all right, on
A
to
lot
our
of birds
next
have
bird.
bad names. Another sparrow.
This one
All right, so
comes
for
from the land of my people, Illinois.
absolutely, absolutely. So I love this sparrow. This is another. So if we're thinking about sparrows in terms of their genus, this is an all over streaky sparrow. It does not have a plain breast like the Spizella sparrows do. It's got a streaky breast. It's got a very kind of strong face pattern and relatively long tail. So we can put this in the genus Melospiza or Melospiza. I don't know how that's
Mm-hmm.
actually pronounced, which include some of our more familiar sparrows. Song sparrow is a Melospiza, swamp sparrow is a Melospiza, and Lincoln sparrow is a Melospiza. So those are the three that this bird is. Those are the three that we're going to kind of be working through with this very streaky buff colored sparrow.
Yeah, and the first thing we notice on this bird, I'm going to kind of focus on the bird's face more than anything.
I like
For
that
the
face.
to start us
That's
off
a great
here
face.
is it's the bird is very pretty.
I love
And
this sparrow.
it's
One of my
got that
favorites.
buffy malar, which is the stripe that comes from the base of the bill down
Mm-hmm.
towards the throat. That contrasts with a gray supercilium. It's got a broad
Mm-hmm.
gray supercilium, and then we
Supercilium
look
is
at
the line over the top of the eye, the
right,
eyebrow.
exactly, and it's got a very bold eye ring. I mean, that eye ring is unmistakable. And the bill is kind of rather thin
Mm-hmm.
for a sparrow. It's kind of got a dainty overall look. Looking at the rest of the bird, the markings are really fine, and
Very fine.
it's the streaking is very accurate. Might be a word that you might apply to that. Um, so I'm going to compare this with the species it is most commonly confused with,
Yeah,
and
nice.
give it away right away. So the bird on the left, which is our mystery bird, is a Lincoln sparrow, as many people in the
Thomas
comments on
Lincoln,
Facebook. Honest
buddy
Abe.
of John James Audubon. The story goes is that Thomas Lincoln was standing next to John James Audubon when he collected the first specimen of Lincoln sparrow, and so he named it after him. That's it. That's the
Yeah,
story.
that's the story.
Proximity to Audubon.
And so
Anyway, yeah.
you'll notice how both of these birds have a lot of streaking on the breast. Typically, that kind of rules out swamp sparrow. Juveniles can
Mhm.
have streaking, but not quite as much.
Not a
Both of
lot.
these
Yeah.
birds have a buffy kind of malar, that stripe here that contrasts with the gray stripe over the eye. Um, but then now look at the let's stay on the face for a moment. The bill on the song sparrow on the right is a tad
Thick.
heavier.
Yep.
These both of these pictures were taken in Illinois. One
Hmm.
caveat with song sparrow is, boy, do they look different from one end of the area to the
Very
other.
variable species. Yeah. Very dark in
So
the west. Very. I
and
mean, this is
big,
this is a classic one. If I were to pin this to a subspecies, I'd probably say it's the dominant one,
yeah.
Melodia, which is the one that's found that breeds across all of the most of the lower 48. They tend to get a little darker in the Pacific Northwest, like most birds do, and there are some
Mm-hmm.
Atlantic Canada breeding song sparrows that can be more finely streaked than the ones that people are familiar with breeding in their neighborhoods. But for the most part, they all sort of look of a piece.
Yeah. And so going back over the rest of the bird, south of the bird's head, look how the Lincoln sparrow, the markings are just all really crisp and look like they were drawn with a
Mm-hmm.
fine pencil. And the song
Exactly.
sparrow is really blurry and looks like it was done with pastel sticks
Or a
and
crayon,
or crayon. Yeah, that holds true through pretty much all the plumages of
for sure.
all the eastern uh, variants that you might get of these two species.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, for
one other,
sure. Some of the song sparrows can be more grayer. I've seen some of
mm-hmm,
the ones that winter in the southeast that breed further north that are tend to be more grayer and less rufous than the Melodia ones, like the one you photographed here. But they are never that sort of neat olive gray
right.
color that a Lincoln sparrow is going to be, which is our mystery bird. I don't know if we've said it yet, but they're. I mean, it's got that beautiful buffy olive that all Lincoln sparrows do. They aren't nearly as variable as a song sparrow is. That makes it stands out. There are a few other things. They tend to have a shorter tail. Song sparrows have a very long tail for a sparrow.
Yeah, and this one's
And
tail is being cut off by the branch that's in
yeah,
front of
you
it.
could imagine it going on for a couple more centimeters.
Yep.
And the head too, that kind of peaky headed expression is they aren't always like that, but if you see it, that's a good clue for Lincoln Sparrow. Song
Now
Sparrow doesn't do that nearly as often. Yeah.
that's something I was going to get to, and the reason I picked the photo on the right to compare it to
Mm-hmm.
is because both of these birds are what we call teed up.
Yeah.
They are alert, and they raise their crest when they're alert. And I've heard the song sparrow or the Lincoln sparrow referred to as having a top hat. It actually
Mm-hmm.
has a bushy little crest, and
Yeah.
on the song sparrow, it raises the feathers on its head, and the head just gets more volume. It still has that
Rounder.
rounded
Yeah.
shape.
It's like
It's
a
just
pompadour.
more volume. Whereas the Lincoln sparrow actually has like a little bit of a crest, and Lincoln sparrow does that quite a bit. You can see the bird
Yeah.
in a
Frequently.
bush, like in the dark, badly lit. But if you can see that shape, it'll often give it away.
Yeah. Very
And
distinctive
again, notice
profile.
when they're side by side, the white eye ring really stands out.
Yeah, definitely. Colin Conroy asks, is there any regional variation in Lincoln? I do not believe so. Their
There,
breeding range is much
yeah.
narrower than song sparrow, which obviously breeds across the entirety of the North American continent. Lincoln sparrow is typically a where does it breed? It breeds up by you, doesn't it, Greg? It's
Yeah, they
primarily
breed. Yeah,
upper
they breed
Midwest
north
is
of
what I
us,
think of.
and they
Yeah.
breed sort of in that northern prairie kind of
Hmm.
scrub.
Yeah, and they winter down in the south central United States and sometimes
Hmm.
across the southeast. They're less common where I live, but you go to some place like Texas in the winter and they're all over the place. Lots of Lincoln sparrows down there.
Hmm. So let's see here. We've got the streaky breast isn't as warm as I expect. I'm not sure exactly what Heidi means by that, but maybe that the streaks on the I get what she's saying. I get what she's saying. The streaks on the song sparrow are kind of they're brown, whereas the streaks all
Hmm.
over the Lincoln sparrow are very blackish.
Black, yeah,
Yeah,
as Greg said, like a
a
finely
pencil.
sharp, perfectly sharpened pencil. Whereas a big brown crayon for song sparrow.
Yeah, all right. I don't know what's coming next because I've kind of lost track, so it's going to be a surprise to both of us.
I'm pulling it up.
Oh, this one. Okay, now we're doing something completely different.
Okay.
Yeah. Now this, I
Okay.
don't know that we're going to be able to come to a conclusion on this, but I saw this picture and I'm like, okay, I want to talk about this one. Um,
Yeah, I have a, yeah, I lean one more than the other. I see where you're going with this, but I
I
lean one more
started
than the
off
other.
leaning one, and then I kind of went back and forth, and now I don't know where I'm at. And
Yeah.
so, all right, we've got a bird that's wading in some mud. We can see the grass and the leaves, so we know it's not huge. It's not an egret or anything like that, or a heron. This is a sandpiper, um,
Mm-hmm.
and the yellow legs and the kind of buffy brown back with the bold spots narrows it down to really just a couple of different birds.
Mm-hmm.
And that's Wilson's phalarope and ruff.
Mm-hmm.
And the initial idea on this bird in What's This Bird was ruff, and then somebody else suggested Wilson's phalarope, and
Mm-hmm.
boy, I wish the feet weren't covered in mud because if we could see those toes really well, phalaropes have unusual feet that have these little
Very, yeah.
phalanges, and if we could see that, we'd know slam dunk what it was. At
Do you
least
know the
May
time that this bird photographed recently?
boy, I don't know,
Yeah.
but I believe it was. So Tim Kalbach says Juvenile Wilson's phalarope impression. All right, and
Mm-hmm.
I get that because
I get
what
that.
it's
That's
doing
what I
is
would
it's
guess.
got that crouching forward kind of
That's what Wilson
which
phalaropes do.
they do, but
Mm-hmm.
the bill shape is really throwing me. So on the left is a ruff, on the right is a Wilson's phalarope, and a couple of things I noticed: this bird's got very little face pattern. Whereas phalaropes, Wilson's phalarope, juvenile, they tend to show some kind of a line through the eye,
Mm-hmm.
or some kind of face pattern. They're not so open, but the bill shape looks spot on for a ruff and really looks too short and thick for a phalarope.
Yeah, and I wonder if there isn't some foreshortening going
I
on
know,
there that's giving you that impression because it's sort of
I
facing
know,
away from you.
I know.
Um,
I don't know that we're going to be able to walk away from this with a definite ID. But it just when I saw the picture, the bill is not being obscured by anything. So if there's
no.
anything going on, it's foreshortening.
So a
Um,
couple things that make me think that I think of when I think of rough. Roughs tend to have very bright colored legs,
mhm.
sort of more orangey, and this one looks very pale yellow, which sort of leads me towards Wilson's Feller. But also, what I've always heard rough described of, and I've seen rough a handful of times, not recently, but is that they have a they're shaped like a gravy boat, right? They have this big body and a relatively small head, and they kind of dip a little bit like a like a
Yeah, but we
Thanksgiving
can't
gravy
really
boat.
see that. I mean, the body is
I no, but
obscured.
the body is it seems awfully slender, at least compared to the legs and the head on this bird, which would lead
Yeah.
more to me that it would be Wilson's Phalarope than Ruff. You know,
Okay, and
all things being equal and not saying anything else.
Cinnamon Stewart points out that the bill is droopy, and that stuck out to me too. And a ruff definitely has a droopy bill, and I think a Wilson's phalarope would have, foreshortened, it would look
It'd be
spiky.
straighter, but it wouldn't necessarily be straight.
It wouldn't. Yeah, I mean, yeah, it's not a least sandpiper. Least
Yeah,
sandpiper would have a different pattern on the back, different colors overall. Um,
yeah, it's shorter legs.
and
Yeah.
shorter legs, exactly. It doesn't have those big stilt-like legs. Um, I, you know, I'm leaning rough. When I started, I saw this bird. I was like, that's a Wilson's phalarope. But then as I looked at it more, particularly the face pattern in the bill, and the spotted appearance to the top, roughs. The picture below is really fresh, but they tend to look spotted on the back. Um,
I think you're in your head too much, Greg. I
no,
think
I may be,
taking the
but
30,000 foot view, it looks more like a Wilson's Phalarope to me.
mm, and that may be. So I think that's kind of where we're gonna leave that.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
So we've got a few minutes left. If you guys want to talk about anything, um,
Hell, it's almost good that we
I
wasted
know.
10 minutes trying to figure out the dumb new Facebook thing.
Well, I thought we'd be talking about the sparrows and stuff a little bit. We kind of rushed through that to try to make up for time.
Fair
Um,
enough.
but so Igleski says he votes Falarope. Good. I'm sure that you have seen a lot of roughs that you can compare that to, Matt. He hasn't. Uh,
But I've been seeing a lot of Wilson's Phalaropes though.
uh, anyway, he's one of my buddies. We're just joking around. Um, so yeah, if you guys have anything, let's see here, anything about the darker area on the side of the rough. Um, let's see here, Paul Jacek, I believe is how you pronounce that. Says anything about the darker area on the side of the rough phalarope below the three spots. That photograph. I can go back to that photo if you want. Um, the that's the flank feathers that look to be kind of fluffed out. And
Yeah.
when you're looking at feathers on that angle, and you can see the gray down underneath, it's really what we're looking at here is the flank feathers are fluffed out over the edge of the wing. You can see that both of the birds below are doing that. They have their flank feathers puffed out over the wing panel.
Scott
Um,
Hickman asks in YouTube, Greg, is there too much of a hind toe on it for Wilson's Phalarope? I admit I don't really know
I don't know.
enough about Phalarope feet aside from the thing that you mentioned earlier.
Yes, Ronan asks, "Am I too late? Have we
Yeah,
talked about
you
ABA
did.
community?" Yes, we have. If you go to the recording on Facebook,
Yeah, I wouldn't go to
you will be
YouTube.
able to see that we had a problem with YouTube and that got cut off the program. Um, that's just the way
All right,
things
sorry,
roll
that's
when
my
you're
fault.
doing it live
It's my fault.
sometimes.
So,
Um,
because anyway, yeah, yeah, I don't know. I need to hold on. I got a shorebird book back here.
wow, that was amazing. He just disappeared.
It's downstairs. It's downstairs.
Oh well. Um, yeah, I've got the Sibley here, and he doesn't really show anything, but well,
I got a bunch of shorebird specific guides. I just don't have them on me. They're all on my they're all on my downstairs bookshelf and not on my office bookshelf.
yeah. Tim Kalbach posts a picture here of a phalarope foot, and yet, like I said, if we could have seen that bird's feet, if it weren't completely covered in mud,
Well,
we would.
look, if you could see that bird moving, it
Well,
would be
yes,
easier. This is the issue with trying to identify birds from still photos rather than
yes,
identifying them in the field. I think if we were in the field and we were all standing there with scopes on this bird, we were watching it. This identification would be a piece of cake.
it would be.
But as it
Uh,
is, we are stuck with this sort of mostly obscured photo that is, causing mystery when maybe there wouldn't be otherwise.
Yeah, so we've got 5 minutes left here, folks. If you've got anything that you want to talk about, please chime in. We're here to take your questions or just vamp about whatever you've got on your mind. Um, also, if you enjoy this with
Yeah,
all
we'll
the
do the
technical
thing. We'll do
glitches
the
and
pitch.
everything, please go to aba.org/join. Your membership helps this program and the American Birding Podcast, which is the best podcast on the planet,
Say.
but also our Young Birder programs and the new ABA community. So for the price of a cup of coffee a month, $2.50 a month, you can have a full ABA membership and have access to all the magazines online and Listing Central and community and everything else that we're doing. And we would love
Greg,
to
I'm going
have
to
you.
throw something in the comments that I'm going to have you discuss.
Uh-oh.
So just randomly Google sent this my way. I ran across this article that was published in Birds and Blooms a couple days ago, and it is does your birth month match your person? Does your birth month bird match your personality? I'm going to put it in the comments for however whatever edification folks might have, and I'm going to ask you, Greg, does your birth. I had no idea there were birth month
I
birds.
had no idea too.
I didn't know that was a thing.
I don't see
But
the
I'm
I don't
putting it
see
on there.
that
Oh,
yet.
it's in the comments now.
Oh, there it
I'll
is.
put it in. Yeah.
So let's see
I'm
here.
gonna
My
ask this
birth.
question to all the people watching and listening. Does your birth month bird match your personality? Mine is an owl. I have no idea why that's a bird because my birthday's in January. Um,
Mine is
I
a
have no idea.
nightingale.
A nightingale. It's
Yeah.
not even. It's not even North American.
Well, neither is the owl in their picture. I think. Let's see.
No, that's a great horn.
Is it? I thought
Oh,
I
it
just.
wouldn't be the first time we
Oh,
see
it is a
eagle
great.
owls.
Yeah, it
This
is a
is
great horn. I got distracted by the macaw.
yeah. Well, it's parrot. You know,
yeah,
of the
exactly.
200 and some species of parrots. Yes, Matt says he feels like a wise and formidable owl. Yeah. Yeah. That's why we're both going for Wilson's Fowler Rope on that last bird because we're wise and formidable owls.
I don't know. My spirit bird is shoebill, so
Bill. The goofy looking bird.
it is. It is a big, goofy looking bird.
Stephen Gollin has a cool question.
What's that?
Why would a sedentary bird like the wren tit have a range that is so far from much as all of its close relatives? That's a great question because wren tit is most closely related to the babblers, which is is this group of family of birds that is its radiation is in Southeast Asia primarily, with a little few in Africa. Yeah. Oh, one of the great birding taxonomy mysteries is why there's a babbler that's in California and nowhere else. I imagine it's because when the continents were together, but man, Asia and North America weren't together, but for many hundreds of millions of years ago. So
Yeah, I
it
mean,
doesn't
it
make
may
any
have been.
sense whatsoever.
Yeah, I mean, it may. Yeah, who knows? It could have been the way that populations on islands get started. You know, with a flock or you know members that land a species that lands and then evolves into something else and then radiates from there. But
Yeah. Well,
it could be
it
due
makes
to
even less sense
Beringia.
with the babbler because they're all little short winged birds that are mostly sedentary. They
Yeah,
don't even range very far within their like immediate area. Babblers are, I mean, wren tits are like families of wren tits just stay in one place. They don't even cross the Columbia River very often to get into to get into Washington. They're very sedentary.
yeah,
It's a
they are.
total mystery.
Yeah.
It's a good question. I have no idea. I have a question. We got a question from oh man, everyone wanted to talk about their birth month birds, so I'm gonna throw up. Lori Johnson says heading to my neck of the woods in a week for the Outer Banks birding trip. Can't wait. I don't blame you. Outer Banks is fantastic. This time of year it is
Yeah.
especially fantastic because you see visible migration is very evident along the Outer Banks. The yellow-rumped warblers ought to start coming down. I know that's a really common species. A lot of people are very familiar with yellow-rumped warblers, but I guarantee you will see so many yellow-rumped warblers along the Outer Banks in the wax myrtle trees. I recall many instances driving down Highway 12 at the Outer Banks, and like you can just look out and you just see yellow-rumped warblers constantly bouncing throughout the
Yeah.
trees, moving southward, little by little by little. There's so many of them there, and there's obviously lots of really other cool warblers that get caught up in those flocks. Um, yeah, I look forward to it. It's a little early for a lot of the waterfowl, though there will still be a fair bit of waterfowl around. You should see some white pelicans at Pea Island and a few of the early ducks. Bitterns are migrating. Should be a lot of bitterns out there right now when you can encounter those. I had a night a few years ago where I was at Pea Island. There's this marsh overlook, and we were at the very end of a big day that we had just done, and we watched like a dozen American bitterns pop out of the marsh as the sun was going down and fly around. It was a really cool.
Oh,
experience.
that's wonderful.
Lot of cool birds on the Outer Banks right now. You'll have a blast.
Yeah, Ronan Okara says that saw-whet owls are migrating now, and yes, they are. The banding stations around me here in northern Illinois have started to pick up their first saw-whet owls.
That's
Um,
cool. That's a bird that is very much overlooked.
it is when you learn what they sound like and learn where they like to hide. You find that there's many more of them around than you'd think there would be.
There were some ornamental trees, some conifers that were in on my street, about 150 meters down the way, and they were kind of surrounding this retention pond that was in the middle of the neighborhood. I always imagined that there would be saw-whet owls in there at some point, and they just cut them down yesterday. I was kind of disappointed. Not
Oh,
going to
that's a
get
shame.
saw-whet owl. Not going to get saw-whet owl in my yard list now.
Mm. So Paul Wood asked, down here in Louisiana, we're all excited about the red-legged
Yeah,
honey
we talked
creepers that
about that
just
a little
showed
bit
up.
early
I've heard
on.
they're also in Texas and Florida now. Are they becoming
Indeed.
more common? Well, this week they sure as heck are. Um,
Yeah, no doubt.
but no, this is an unprecedented event. We talked about that at the beginning of the show
Mm-hmm.
here. This is an unprecedented event, and it's I suppose it's sort of recently maybe the Limkin expansion invasion north, but the Limkin expansion kind of happened over a couple of years, and
Yeah,
this is all in one
yeah.
week. This is crazy.
Yeah, it's got to be weather related. I've seen some speculation from a friend Jeff Boughton, who's a
Yeah.
Florida birder, trying to predict exactly why this is happening right now. And he pointed out that there's a tropical storm spinning west of Yucatan right now. You can go check it out. It's been kind of sitting there for a while, and tropical storms in the northern hemisphere go counterclockwise. So you're looking at red-legged honey creeper, quite common throughout the neotropics. Quite a few of them in Yucatan. They are a migrant to some extent, a relatively short distance migrant, but they do migrate. And you're talking about a
Hmm.
bird that gets kind of out over the water, and you've got a counterclockwise spinning storm west of the Yucatan. That's going to shoot those birds straight up to Florida and maybe even across the Gulf of Mexico if
Yep.
they need to. And there's a lot of places to land in the Gulf of Mexico, a lot of oil derricks all across the entire Gulf where birds can land and rest for a short period before continuing on. And you know you get all those sort of things happening.
That
You've
would
got a perfect situation for this bird to show up in the places where it's shown up.
that would be an interesting thing to do, to be able to, during an event like this, go out and check out the oil rigs and see what's just landed on
Yeah,
all the oil rigs. Because
yeah, a
yeah, I
lot of
mean, if you
migratory birds.
Get on Google Earth and look at the look at the Gulf, and the number of oil rigs out there is
It's just
crazy.
dotted. The entire Gulf is dotted with oil rigs, and
Yeah.
these birds aren't looking for places to stay long periods. They're looking for places to rest when they get blown off by the weather.
Yep.
Maybe they find food, maybe they don't. But they, are able to kind of sit tight for a little while and then continue in whatever direction the prevailing winds are blowing them, and that's how you end up maybe with birds like that in Louisiana
Yeah.
and North Texas, not North
Yep.
Texas, I guess it's Upper Texas coast, and in
Upper.
Florida.
Yep.
There you go.
All right. Well, we are 5 past the hour, so I think we've got to wrap it up here. And again, folks,
Indeed.
if you enjoy what we're doing, cup of coffee a month,
Yep.
$2.50
Join
a
the
month.
ABA. Help us out. We'll be back in a couple weeks. If you want to keep up with when we do this, please sign up for the ABA's Flight Calls newsletter. You can go to the ABA website, aba.org, and there's a sign up at the bottom of the page, Greg, if I remember right.
There is at aba.org. There is a sign up at the
Yep.
bottom of every page in the footer.
Yep, we'll
And
let you know 24 hours in advance when we do this. And fingers crossed, we will have this.
we're gonna make a point of not
We'll
letting
figure something out.
Facebook slap us in the face the way they did this time.
Yesterday was a
We're
surprise. Last time was a total surprise. This week they changed it again. We will not be surprised again. We will have
Yeah.
it ready to go. We will be on time. We apologize for that.
Yeah.
But hey, better late than never, right?
And
So,
YouTubers, get on over to Facebook or Twitter and check it out there, where you can see the whole thing, because you guys, I think,
The
missed
first
the
20
first 10
minutes.
minutes or
Yeah.
20 minutes or whatever it was. So go over to Twitter and go to our ABA Twitter feed or Facebook, and you can see the beginning of that. And we do apologize for that, but Gremlins
Indeed.
were out today. Yeah.
Yeah, well, we'll
All right,
solve
Nate.
it. Yep. See you, Greg. See you, everybody who's watching on all the social media channels. We'll catch you again next time.